Welcome back to Dying Out Loud, the podcast where nothing is left unsaid and we take advantage of every moment that we're given. Today, our episode is going to explore the mentorship and influence of Michael Platt, the founder and former CEO of Platform Advertising and a prolific voice in the higher education advertising sector. As I reflect on the lessons that Michael taught me about leadership, business growth, and balance in life, from early promotions to boardroom collaboration years later, Michael has remained a powerful influence and somebody who I feel truly embodies what success looks like by making time for his family and friends and enjoying life's rewards for all of the hard work that he's done throughout his life in building businesses and teaching future leaders. So please help me in welcoming Michael to the show. Michael, thanks so much for joining me. I'm excited to be able to catch up with you today and just share a little bit about the influence that you've had over who I've become.
Well, thank you, Kris. I appreciate the invitation.
It's an absolute pleasure. I think a lot about the days at Platform, and it's so interesting to me that the time that you were at Platform, whenever I was at Platform, it was really a very small window. And I always think back to those days because Platform was really the first agency that I worked for where I really felt like I was a contributor to what we were doing. And it makes me wonder, in those days, and certainly at the time that we worked together, I know you had like a pretty immense vision for where you saw Platform heading, where you wanted to go yourself, and where you wanted all of these great young leaders that you groomed to be able to go. What really was your vision and your motivation for starting the company and really for embracing your people the way that you did? I mean, some amazing leaders came out of Platform. So I'm just dying to know, was there a recipe?
Well, first of all, I got into the industry. I'm going to say the education industry. I'd been doing advertising. I actually owned a pro wrestling organization and started doing ads for an automotive school using some of the wrestlers on behalf of the school. Ended up saying, hey, I can place your media. I can do your creative, do your planning, do everything. And before I knew it, I was in. There was never a time in advertising where I was handling clients where I felt like I was really doing a service for people. And I was doing Mexican restaurants and car dealerships and all your typical type of local advertising clients. And then I started doing schools, and I went to a graduation ceremony, believe it or not, at a truck driving school, and had a woman break down in tears because she said she thought I was a teacher or something at the school. And she said, you brought my family together because my husband I had kicked him out till he could find a job. And now he's got a great job starting next week and he's moving back in and the kids are so happy. And I'm like, oh, I got to do this the rest of my life. I mean, this is going to be my niche. And so once we started, we had the typical ups and downs, had a few clients here or there, but we hit a place where we started to grow consistently. And that was when my wife joined me. And she looks at things very different than I do. And I think the balance really made a difference. And so we started to grow. And by far, the thing that I just got the greatest high from was watching the people. As you know, I hired mostly 20 to 23-year-olds right out of school, high school or college, and we developed people. And we started a mentoring program, and we started Platform University, where we help people do everything from learn how to buy a car to learn how to use Excel. And so watching people go from right out of school and nervous about their first job to leading meetings and going to client meetings, and I'm talking big clients. And we think of people like Tracy Krakemeyer, who at 25 years old was handling our largest client. There's nothing like that. And so what I tried to do is just keep replicating that. I mentored Tracy, and then I wanted Tracy to mentor you and some of the people in her department. And we kept going. And if you remember Joy Booth, she basically split out from the department and became the head of the mentoring program. And pretty much everyone in our company well, everyone was a mentee, and I would say 3/4 of the people there were in the process or fully mentoring people.
Yep.
And that to me just it's like I could just sit back, put my hands behind my head and enjoy what was happening because something I hadn't seen in other companies. I always like to be the first to do something. I think that's cool. It's probably why I got in
Absolutely.
advertising, right? I love to see something that you're doing that's unique, really work. And then all of a sudden, if you remember, I was an ordained minister. I started marrying some of the people who worked for us, marrying
Yes.
to each other. And then from there, I started, watching them have children and seeing their growth and starting to focus on just work-life balance. And you know me, my work-life balance when my kids were little was I worked, my wife took care of life. And, but as they grew up, then you start realizing you're not going to get those years back. And you try to work on it. And while I liked when people were at the office doing their work, the old days when people actually came to an office, I I understood that they had to recharge. So it was an incredible run. And it was never about it was a little bit about the clients. It was a little bit about the students who graduated and got great jobs and their families. But it was really about the people who were in that office. That's what charged me up.
I love every single thing about what you just shared. And I think the coolest part about that is for anybody that was really listening and maybe taking notes, because my friends, this is definitely a man that you should be taking notes as he's speaking because he is the definition of success. Everything that you said was about the people that were under your care as your employees and the way that you engaged them and offered them a mentorship program. And I have to tell you, and I think I probably shared this with you before, but when Joy was my coach and mentor, and obviously I was receiving mentorship from Tracy as well, but I specifically was having coaching conversations with Joy. In that moment, in that time in my career, I said, I know that this is what I want to do at some point in time. And never until this diagnosis had I really been able to. Now, I coached people all along because I firmly believe after my time spent at Platform that mentoring someone, helping someone else achieve their life goals, that's where like the sweet sauce is, right? Like that's the best part of what we get to do. So I've always been happy to help lift people up or, help instill like the right traits or get people focused on the right soft skills. But really that support that you received or we received in those coaching conversations, to me, like I knew there was something there for me. And the last 3 years, I've been an executive coach at my agency. And, I even reached out to Joy like after I started coaching and I just said, hey, Joy, I don't know if I ever told you this whenever we worked together, but you really inspired me in those coaching moments. And, I think about all of the people that we got to work with. You mentioned Tracy. Tracy's actually, I think I'm speaking to her for the podcast in a couple of weeks because
Cool.
I want her to know too, like what her mentorship truly meant to me. The education that I got in business from Platform changed the trajectory of my life 100%. I don't think I had ever been so closely in tune with the people that I was working with, the things that we were trying to achieve together as a team, and some of the brightest folks that I've ever worked with. I mean, I recall planning to go like to one of the conventions that we would go to, and you would be on speakerphone, and it would be Angie and Brad and myself and a handful of other folks, Tracy in there, and we would be plotting out how we were going to make a splash. And like those moments together, I just was so inspired by them. So I want you to
Yeah.
know that
If you remember, we started doing the planning for the next year the Monday after the
yes,
annual meeting every year. We had 364 days to plan.
that's right. That's the way to approach it though. And the camaraderie and the collaboration and the spirit that just went into everything we did there was really the first time I think I'd ever experienced that in an office setting. And I'm so happy that things have come full circle because where I'm working now, I feel like the intention behind the beginning of the agency that I work at now is very much in line with kind of how you started Platform, and there really is like this huge focus on our people and how we're supporting them, not just at work, but in life, and how we're helping feed their ability to go out and enjoy and explore and support families and things like that. And we pay a lot of attention to that. So I'm really glad that it's come kind of full circle in that way.
Right. And I don't know if I ever said this to you, but the greatest CEOs aren't great leaders. They're great leaders of leaders of leaders. And that's how those companies, when you finally retire, as I did, they continue to be successful because you're leaving a legacy. There's no success without a successor, right? So
Absolutely.
it's things like that as you get a little older, for me, it was about, all right, stop trying to be the best media buyer, the best creative director, the best, the account executive. I could only grow so much as a company when I had to be the best one at everything. It
That's
was
right.
when actually Brad Gibbs took sales away from me and became better than me at sales. And then Tammy did it with creative, and Dave did it with media, and it just Tracy and Mike. And it was just one of those things where all of a sudden it's like, this is really cool. I can work when I want to, which was most of the time, but I
Sure.
could work when I want to. I can step back and let them be successful. And that's, you'll remember, if you were an account executive, one of the things I told all the account executives was, you take all the blame, you pass all the credit.
Yep.
And that's a great way to not have to be involved on every call, in every situation, in every meeting, is to empower people to get to the point where they have the confidence to keep their clients happy. And to me, you guys were my clients, right? It wasn't, Bill, a Corinthian, was Tracy's client,
Right. That's
right?
right.
Tracy was my client.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I love that mentality about, you give the credit and you take, the weight of the problems and the stress. And I really feel like that is something that, I did learn at Platform, and I've carried that with me everywhere. And I think what I have learned from the teams of people that I supported, in those years between now and Platform, that mentality was a great eye opener for people, and certainly for the people that I, was able to instill anything about leadership. And, I feel like those people have gone on and kind of adopted that philosophy as well. I mean, it's the best way to build a team of people around you that A, can be smarter than you, and B, can be trusted and run with that autonomy and just do amazing things.
Right. And like Stephen Covey said, he didn't say learn it, then do it. He said learn it, then teach it,
Yeah,
then do it. Right. Because when you
exactly.
teach it, you're putting the weight of your belief system behind it. And it starts to be, not only starts to become a habit, but it also, you're so committed to it because you're telling everybody else they should do it. Right. So it's going to have to be something they see in you. It's not just words you're saying, it's the actions you take.
I love that. It makes I recall the very first time that I actually spoke to you, and it was on a phone. Actually, you had called and said, "Hey, I'd like for us to set up some time to chat so I can get to know who you are." And, at that point in time, having not had very much interaction, only seeing you in the hall and saying hello, I was like, how the hell did I even get on this guy's radar? Do you remember how that transpired? I still don't know.
Yeah, Tracy,
But do it.
a lot of times when we would have our staff meetings, I would just come up with a question and go around the room. And there was a time when I came up with a question. I said, "Who's the rising superstar that I haven't been watching for 5 years? Don't give me the
Sure.
obvious one. Who's the rising superstar, the new kid on the block that I'm going to be impressed with?" And both of them at the same time said your name.
I love that. The affinity, respect, and just everything that I have for both of those ladies is tremendous. So it that feels very full circle to hear that. But I definitely loved their leadership, loved the partnership, and certainly the things that I was able to learn from them. I mean, it's interesting when you start to piece together all these little life lessons that you've collected along the way, and you
Right.
start looking backwards and you realize that you're still becoming someone. Like, I know I'm not fully to the person that I'm going to be when it's all said and done. And right now it feels like I've had so much time to reflect on the people and what they really did teach me and what they offered me. And to be able to come back and just share with people, like, I'm not sure if you realized what you actually did for me, as a human and as a leader in business. But these conversations were geared exactly for that, to be able to connect with people and let them know exactly how they changed their lives.
Yeah, I started to realize it more at the second place where we reconnected,
Yeah.
because you and I were doing weekly or biweekly meetings, and you were like absorbing it so much that
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
wow, this stuff actually does make a difference. So
It those days, quite honestly, I mean, obviously I credit a lot to platform because that is where I met you and that's where I picked up on a lot of the lessons that you instilled in others. But to your point, when we did reconnect, I felt so thrilled because it was like, now I have my mentor again. And that wasn't something that I was receiving at that organization. I was brought into that organization because they knew that I could build a client service team really on my own. Like they were looking at me as the expert. But what I wasn't getting was that mentorship until you came back into that fold. And
well,
I was so
yeah.
glad about the opportunity I mean, I still have notebooks. They are literally sitting right next to me, less than 2 feet away, that I crack open that have notes from those conversations.
Well, and I'll tell you what, people don't realize this. So for me, I developed the mentor program. It was my brainchild. I was the CEO and I had a mentor. From the day I started that company, I had a mentor. And it was, and he unfortunately passed about 7 or 8 years before I sold the company. But then I sought another one, someone who worked for Sterling. So I don't know if you remember Kris Saim, but he
Yep.
became my mentor. I never felt like being a mentor isn't like there's the top mentor in the world. We all bring something different to the table. And when
Yeah.
we talk about Tracy and Joy, think about this for a second. Joy, when I hired her, it was a homemaker, the wife of a pastor, had not really done anything. I think she was a secretary once, years earlier. And she came in and she was just a sponge and she learned. And Joy never really mentored you on how to do your job. Joy mentored you on how to do life.
Yes.
Tracy, I brought in as really sharp, smart graduate of University of Nebraska, who from day one could do her job like nobody else. And she mentors you on how to do your job.
Yep.
And so that's another thing, is being able to change up mentors every once in a while or have more than one person can be so helpful. And I think that company, they brought you in to build a client service department, but they also brought you in to be everybody's mentor. And I don't think there was much consideration. I think you probably had a bit of an assumption without thinking about it out loud that the CEO was going to be your mentor because you remembered, at platform, you and I would have those
Yep.
and that's just not his style.
No.
And they don't have that culture. Doesn't mean they're a bad company. They're a good company, but
Sure.
we just did things different. And the other thing is we had way more fun than any other company I
I
know in
agree.
the advertising business. I mean, the crazy things and fun things we did. That's why, I didn't have to be the top paying company in the business. And when I left, those things went away. And, I wouldn't say I was the chief fun officer, but I was part of that. And
Absolutely.
all of a sudden, our labor costs went way up because we had to pay a lot more to keep people. So it's just a different way of doing business.
It definitely is. And I think there's something to be said too for anybody that worked there and got to experience what that mentorship looked and felt like. That was such a, like, you can't put a price on that, honestly. And when I think about all of the experiences that I've been fortunate enough to have, the places where they really invested in me and my leadership ability, like that has come back to me like exponentially, like greater than tenfold, like all of those lessons. And not only have they impacted the way that I am able to engage truly with anyone. I mean, I learned at Platform that I could speak to the CEO of a school as if we were old college buddies and we were able to make a connection. And then we were able to ultimately do business and solve the problems that they brought to the table for us. But even today, like as I look back on those opportunities, and I even still every once in a while talk to a couple of my old CEO clients from Platform. And obviously, I went to work for one that was a client of mine at Platform. But the lessons in how you relate to people, nobody ever said that they were teaching the art of building relationships, but that was something that I absolutely walked away with, like a master of education in relationships. And I never acknowledged that until in the last couple of years, people have said, this is something that, you're an expert at, and you should be letting people know like the tricks and the tips that you have. And I never even looked at it like that. I always just thought like, well, this is who I am as a human. And I'm like this outside of work. So I want to be able to be this engaging with people at work too.
Well, you had something that most people don't get, and that is, yeah, I remember one of our young people who didn't think he was moving up fast enough. He said to me, "Start teaching me." I said, "Start learning."
Right.
It's not about you have to, first of all, you have to seek it out. And second of all, the greatest teacher in the world can't do a damn thing with the worst learner.
That's right.
And so it does take both parts. You were always, you wanted to be in every meeting you could be in. You wanted to be involved in everything you could be involved in. Most people, especially I think today, aren't like that. They're like,
Yeah.
it's an overused word at this point, but to say entitled, it's like, I'm entitled to have your time. No, 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 no. You're not entitled to have my time.
Right.
If you ask for it and you're sincere about your desire and you continue to show that, you'll get my time. But we had at one point over 450 employees.
Right.
I was not going to be able to give my time to 450 employees. I think there was like, we already had the call center, so there was like probably 250 or 300 when you were there.
Over there. Well, Michael, on every episode of this podcast, I have a message to share with the person that I've invited on, and today's no different. So if you'll give me just a couple of minutes, I'm going to share with you. And it might even look like I'm reading, but that's because I am going to read because I want to make sure that I don't mince words and I don't forget anything that is important to say. So, Michael, from the very beginning of my career at Platform, you saw something in me that I hadn't yet seen in myself. Your support led to not only one of the biggest promotions that I've ever received in my career, but more importantly than that, your support led to you becoming a mentor to me. And through the examples that you set and the examples that the rest of the leadership team that you built set, I was able to really see what great leadership looked like, leading teams, guiding their growth, balancing that work and life, and really leading a full and meaningful life. Like you were a great example in all of those areas. And I was so fortunate that a decade later, our paths crossed again. And I was reminded again of your consistency, your wisdom, and your generosity. You've always been someone that I have looked up to, not just because of your success, but because of how you embraced and lived that success while you were still on your journey, making time for family, for friends, making time for people like me, people that, just were fortunate enough to work for you. And you've really shown me that true success isn't just about what you build and what you leave behind, but it's how you live in each of those moments along that journey. So I want you to know that I am truly, truly grateful for you, for Tammy, for the entire group of people that you invited me in to be a part of at Platform, and ultimately for the influence that you've had in my life and the lessons that I learned from you that I still carry with me. Just want you to know that from the bottom of my heart that I am truly grateful just for your mentorship and your friendship. It has meant the world to me.
Thank you. Thank you. And honestly, you were one of the people that there were people who I would spend time and mentor and who I kind of dreaded it. You were never one of them.
Thank you. I'm glad to know that.
No, we always actually we laughed. We
did.
Time. We didn't always talk business, and we talked life. And to me, that's part of it. It's not just work-life balance. It's even the balance with someone that you have as an employee. You also want to have other parts of relationships, friendship,
Yeah,
or in the case of platform, family, as you
that's
know,
right.
lots of family members who are
Yeah.
broke every rule. But you were so hungry for, being better every day, and that is there's nothing like it for someone who's trying to build a company and mentor than to have somebody who is just hungry to get better at what they do. So I thank you too. I mean, and you developed a lot of good people at Platform. So
And I'm still in touch with most of them. And it's so awesome to see these people are now like VPs, they're CEOs of their own companies. It's incredible to think like you were an account coordinator on my
right.
team. And it's just so awesome to see. And those people too, they carried the lessons that we taught them at, not in a formal teaching setting, but just the way that we showed up every day and the way we did our jobs. It
Yeah.
instilled like great just caliber and character in folks. And
Yeah.
it's so
My
awesome to
son
see.
works for a great company. I walk in there, there's John Van Fleet, there's Angie Kaiser. It's like, the people that experienced that still wanted to work together, and a lot of
Yeah,
them do.
I
Most of
love
the people
that.
who are still in advertising are somewhere with 2, 3, 10, 15
Yep.
former platformers. So
It's
yeah,
true.
and
I am
yeah,
highly jealous of the crew that is working in Overland Park together now, because there's a lot of my favorite platformers that are working there. And
yeah.
boy, I would love to revisit those days and just that energy and all of the collaborative spirit that we had working together.
I tell you to stop by there, but the world has changed and nobody goes to the office anymore.
Of course,
You'd have to jump on a Zoom
Zoom.
like what we're doing now.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Michael, thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Thank you for the invitation. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And folks, if you're listening, I'm going to invite you to reach out to that mentor that has been in your life, like Michael has been in mine. And I'm going to encourage you to reach out to that individual and say thank you and share the impact that they truly have had on you. This is your invitation. I hope as soon as you stop listening today that you'll pick up the phone and make that happen. And if not, come back next week and I'll work a little harder to get you to do that. So, on behalf of everybody here at Dying Out Loud, Michael, again, thanks. And folks, we'll catch you next week. Talk to you soon.